I've been working outside of Ireland. I grew up, I was born in Ireland, but I grew up in England, and I've been working and living outside for most of my life in the US, but most recently in Asia. So I was particularly interested in trying to understand how the Irish community as a whole, how that community is reacting to the current situation for Ireland, and how, as a community, we can come together and try and understand and apply some of our learnings and help Ireland recover and build and become much stronger. Not only for Ireland's sake, but also for our sake outside of Ireland. It's a win-win, of course. I was expecting that we would talk about some of the key issues, and we did talk about the issues. I was very pleased about that. I live and work in Korea. I work for a Korean company. I run the global marketing for a Korean company. So I come with a slightly different insight in some respects. It's not the Irish community itself that I work very closely with in that particular country. It's trying to bring a sense of Irishness to Korea and to my Korean colleagues that particularly interests me, and how can I interest them in Ireland. That's one of the things I was hoping I would learn more about today, try and convince this meeting that we should be paying attention to Asia in general. I think we have two types of Irish community out there. We have an Irish community that is established, the US, parts of Europe, the UK, Australia, Singapore maybe. But we have other areas where we don't have that sense of establishment at all. And I think we may need to have two types of strategy in terms of leveraging the one area where we already have the Irish community, and in building Ireland's reputation, Ireland's image, Ireland's brand with a different type of community. And predominantly in Asia, that's the concern. I've lived in Philippines, I've lived in Japan and Korea. In those places, Ireland doesn't really have a very clear image or a brand. So I think I'm hoping we'll see sort of two forms of strategy and approach and actions that will be taken to address the needs. That's a great question, because I think we need the government to play a very strong role in supporting a relatively small diaspora that exists in the Asian environment. And one of the great ways would be more visits by ministers. I realize sometimes in Ireland, Irish people may think, why are these people going off on these apparent junkets? They're not. They're critical. If we want to be successful in Asia, it takes time to build a relationship. And Asians want to see the same person. And they want to be able to look that same person in the eye and say, I'm beginning to understand you, to trust you. And sometimes it requires a drink, and sometimes it requires a serious business conversation, but it's the relationship that's being built. So seeing the ministers come out and visit us and spend time with us in Korea, in Japan, in China is going to be absolutely critical. Seeing them repeat those visits, not just once every 5 years, but once every year ideally, or even more frequently. That'll be a very helpful way of doing it. We talked here about trying to establish great clarity around what Ireland is going to offer. What is Ireland's brand? What is the offering that we have? Communicating that consistently and continuously is also going to be very important. If we can do those things, I think we can be very, very successful. We have a great package to sell. We have the wonderful culture that everyone talked about so proudly there, and I'm very proud of that culture. But that's not necessarily enough. We have to demonstrate that Ireland offers something more than just that culture, something that really can be very pragmatic and tangible and give benefit to those countries when they come here.